Cops storm Black CEO's wedding. To arrest him freeze. When sheriff walks his daughter down the aisle. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's video, I need your help. We've noticed that the channel is losing traction, and subscribing is one of the best ways you can help us. It's quick, free, and allows us to continue bringing you great content. Your support means everything. Let's keep this channel growing collectively. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's get back to the story. You're under arrest. The shout cracked through the chapel like thunder splitting glass. Petals froze mid-air. The music stopped mid-note. Every guest turned as the oak doors burst open, sunlight flaring off badges, boots striking in rhythm. 3 FBI agents fanned out, weapons drawn. Behind them strode a local officer, jaw tight, voice sharp with authority he didn't truly own. The bride gasped, clutching her husband's arm. The groom Darius Cole stood still. No flinch, no panic, just disbelief. His white tux caught the morning light, calm against chaos. The officer pointed. Hands where I can see them. You're coming with us, Mr. Cole. The name echoed through the hall like an accusation. Guests whispered, shocked. Isn't he that tech guy? What's happening? The bride's voice broke. This is a wedding. You can't just... The officer snapped. Ma'am, step aside. He's wanted for federal fraud. Darius exhaled. Slow, measured. Fraud? He almost smiled. That's new. Quote. Phones lifted. Someone near the back whispered, Are they serious? Another guest muttered, Don't move, they'll shoot. Before we continue, where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. And if you believe in dignity and justice, hit like and subscribe. These stories spark change and we're glad you're here. Now, back to Darius. The officer stepped closer, reading from a digital tablet. We have a warrant, issued this morning. You've been flagged for embezzlement through Apex Systems. Gasps rippled through the pews. Apex Systems, the cybersecurity empire Darius had built from nothing. The bride's mother rose, trembling. That's impossible. He's the one who helps law enforcement track criminals. But the officer ignored her, motioning his men forward. On your knees now, he barked. Darius didn't move. He looked past them, toward the open door where light poured in, unblinking. You sure about this? He asked quietly. The officer hesitated. Excuse me? Darius's tone stayed level. You came into a church, on camera, without verifying your warrant. The FBI lead raised his tablet again. It's real clearance. Digital signature, Sheriff's Department approved. At that name, the room shifted. The bride froze. The sheriff, Darius's voice dropped to a near whisper. Then call him, right now. A beat of silence. The agent frowned. We don't have to. Do it, Darius interrupted. Steady, cold, before you embarrass yourselves any further. The officer hesitated, glancing toward his team. One muttered, This is getting weird. And then, from somewhere outside the chapel, a car door slammed. Footsteps, heavy, measured. Every head turned as the sunlight in the doorway dimmed beneath a tall shadow. The crowd parted in silence, the tension coiling like a held breath. A figure stepped in, broad-shouldered, uniform gleaming with gold trim. The sheriff had arrived. He paused, scanning the chaos, eyes locking on Darius. The air felt electric, like justice itself had just entered the room. Cut to black. The sheriff stepped through the doors like a storm that had changed its mind. No shouting, no drawn weapon, just presence. Sunlight trailed behind him, cutting through the dust and chaos. The polished badge on his chest caught the light, a badge designed by Darius's own company. The irony didn't need words. Every agent froze. The one with the warrant lowered his weapon first, hesitation spreading like static through the room. The sheriff's boots echoed against the marble aisle, each step erasing another layer of tension. He stopped halfway down, eyes sweeping over the frozen crowd, white flowers, pale faces, phones raised. The bride trembled beside Darius, her veil quivering like a flame. The sheriff spoke, voice steady and deep. Whose idea was it to crash a wedding with guns drawn? The lead officer swallowed hard. Sir, we received an urgent clearance flag digital order from HQ. said Mr. Cole was under federal suspicion. The sheriff turned his head slightly, gaze narrowing. HQ doesn't issue wedding raids. Who authorized the breach? Silence thickened. The young officer fumbled with his tablet. The system signed off, auto-verified. Whose system? The sheriff asked again, quieter, now dangerous quiet. A beat passed. Then Darius answered for him. Mine. The word landed like thunder. Gasps spread through the pews. The bride's mother covered her mouth. The sheriff's eyes didn't widen, but something changed behind them, a recognition. He nodded slowly. Mr. Cole, I assume this was some kind of error. Darius straightened his jacket. Not an error. A test. Someone inside your digital clearance network is manipulating data feeds. They used my company's security architecture against me. The sheriff exhaled through his nose, heavy. And they just broadcasted their mistake to half the city. He faced the team again. Lower your weapons, now. Quote. Metals slid back into holsters. The tension drained like air from a wound. Darius turned toward the nearest camera still recording. Cut the feed. A tech operator in the back froze. Sir, it's already live. Darius's eyes flicked to the sheriff. Then we finish it live. The sheriff gave a single nod. Proceed. Darius reached into his inner pocket, retrieving a small black device, the same prototype Apex used to intercept cyber attacks. He tapped the screen once. Instantly, every tablet and body cam in the room blinked red, then displayed a single phrase. Unauthorized action. Trace initiated. The crowd murmured, unsure if it was part of the wedding. The sheriff smirked faintly. You built the system, didn't you? Darius replied, calm but cutting. And I built it to hold people accountable. He turned to the agents, eyes sharp. You didn't just interrupt a wedding, you triggered an internal audit across every department linked to my tech. Within the hour, someone's name will surface. The sheriff folded his arms, nodding once. Then I suggest we all wait here for the truth to arrive. The camera panned slowly across the stunned faces, the bride still gripping Darius's hand, the agents shifting uneasily, the sheriff standing like a wall between order and disgrace. For the first time, the room felt quiet again, not with fear, but with the heavy calm of justice about to land. The air inside the chapel felt different now, no longer chaotic, but dense, charged. Every screen in the agent's hands glowed crimson, the same warning repeating, trace initiated. Darius stood at the center of it all, shoulders square, expression unreadable. The device in his hand pulsed softly, casting faint red light across his white tux. You wanted proof, he said quietly. Now you're part of it. Quote. The guests murmured, some recording again, others whispering names they'd heard from the news. The bride's veil shimmered under the fractured sunlight cutting through the tall stained glass. She didn't move, just watched her husband with the stunned pride of someone realizing who she'd really married. The sheriff moved beside Darius, half guardian, half judge. What happens next? He asked. Darius's eyes didn't leave the glowing device. The system calls home. Every authorization ping leaves a trail. Whoever spoofed the clearance, whoever tried to weaponize my tech, will be on that feed in 60 seconds. The younger agents shifted, uneasy. One whispered, Sir, we didn't know. Darius's tone stayed low but sharp. You didn't ask. That's the difference. A ping echoed from the sheriff's radio, an automated tone, followed by a voice over the comms. Priority breach alert. Source flagged. Internal operations. District command. Quote. The sheriff's jaw tightened. District command, he repeated, voice darkening. That's headquarters. Gasps rippled again. The lead agent stepped forward, stammering. That can't be right, sir. Our own division. It was compromised. Darius finished for him. Whoever sent you wasn't looking for justice. They were looking for headlines. The sheriff turned, addressing his team. Lower your comms. No more transmissions. This wedding is now a secured zone. Quote. Outside, the distant sound of sirens began to fade as backup units received the recall order. The sunlight brightened through the windows, dust swirling like gold flakes over the aisle. The bride stepped forward finally, voice trembling but steady. So all this, it was to humiliate you? Darius nodded. To make me look guilty before I could testify. The sheriff glanced at him. Testify about what? About who's been selling our data access to private defense firms. Quote. The words dropped like lead. Phones lowered. Guests stopped whispering. Everyone understood the weight of that accusation. One of the agents looked around, panicked. We need to shut this down before it leaks. Darius cut him off. It already has. My system mirrored the stream to federal oversight 15 minutes ago. The sheriff gave a small, grim smile. You always were 3 steps ahead, weren't you? Darius's gaze softened for the first time. That's what it takes to survive, when they expect you to fail. From the back row, a reporter who had come as a guest slowly raised her hand, trembling. Mr. Cole, are you saying someone inside Federal Command targeted you? Darius turned toward her. I'm saying the truth doesn't scare me, but it terrifies those who build power on silence. The church was utterly still. The only sound was the low hum of the device as it displayed a final line across its glowing surface. Source identified. Internal command. Level 6 clearance. The sheriff's voice broke the silence. Level 6. That's my superior. Darius nodded once. Then I suggest you call him. Tell him his warrant just went public. The sheriff met Darius's eyes, the faintest trace of respect there now. Mr. Cole, he said quietly, you've just declared war on the system. Quote. Darius looked toward his bride, then back at him. No, Sheriff. I just reminded it who built the system. And as the choir began to hum again, the air felt lighter, like truth itself had taken its first breath. The silence after the revelation felt holy. No one dared move. The red glow on every screen had faded, replaced by a static message. Data logged. Evidence secured. Then a single sound broke through the creak of a pew. A young woman stood up from the third row, clutching a microphone meant for wedding vows. Her name was Elena Ruiz, one of Darius's junior engineers at Apex. She had come as a guest, never expecting to become part of the story. Mr. Cole, she said, voice shaking but clear. I saw the clearance log this morning. Someone bypassed your encryption layer using your old admin ID. It wasn't you. It was copied. Heads turned. The agents looked at one another, startled. The sheriff nodded toward her. Go on. Elena swallowed hard. The access came from an internal node tagged D6 District Command. I traced it, but it disappeared 2 minutes before the raid. Darius's expression didn't change, but his eyes softened. You still monitor the sandbox servers? She nodded. Every night, sir. You taught us never trust silence. That line hit the room like scripture. Even the bride smiled faintly through her tears. The sheriff motioned one of his deputies to record her statement, but Elena lifted her chin. No need. It's already in the audit feed. She turned her phone toward the crowd, live footage rolling, mirrored to Apex's secure cloud. Her courage spread through the room like current through wire. From the back, a man in a gray suit stood next. I'm Jacob Reed, independent journalist. I was covering this wedding for Lifestyle Media, but I'm streaming now. People need to see this. And another guest spoke up. You mean they set him up because he's black? The words hung heavy, uncomfortable. True. The sheriff didn't answer, but his silence spoke volumes. Darius finally looked around the church, faces of disbelief, shame, and awakening. When I built Apex, he said, voice low, I wanted to protect systems from corruption. What I didn't realize was that the hardest system to fix is people's assumptions. He looked at Elena. Thank you for standing up. Quote. She nodded, trembling but proud. I learned that from you, sir. Outside, news vans were already gathering. Through the stained glass, the flashing lights of cameras replaced the earlier glare of sirens. The sheriff turned toward his men. Stand by the doors. No one leaves until the official statement is issued. One of the agents protested. Sir, this isn't protocol. The sheriff shot him a look sharp enough to cut air. Neither is raiding a man's wedding. Quote. Darius stepped forward, taking the center of the aisle again. Sheriff, you asked what happens next. He held up the device. Its screen now showed an auto-feed countdown, 3 minutes until live transfer to federal oversight. In 3 minutes, every byte of this event, every command, every voice will be archived permanently. No one can rewrite it. The sheriff straightened his jacket, then let it stand. The crowd seemed to exhale as one. A child somewhere in the back began to clap softly, then another, then more. The sound grew, rippling through the hall until applause filled the space where fear had lived moments before. Darius didn't smile, but the corner of his mouth lifted slightly. He turned to his bride and whispered, "We just made history on our wedding day." She squeezed his hand. "Then let them remember it right." The camera panned across the standing guests, some still filming, others just watching, stunned. For the first time, the lens didn't feel like intrusion. It felt like witness. And as the last line of red text blinked across the device, "Transfer complete," the light returned to normal. The wedding could begin again. But nothing about the world outside those church doors would ever be the same. The applause faded slowly, replaced by the low hum of the device still syncing its final transmission. The guests stayed standing, unsure if they'd just witnessed justice or the beginning of something far bigger. The sheriff's radio crackled again, but this time it wasn't a voice, it was static, then a faint digital echo. Darius's gaze snapped toward it. "That's not interference," he murmured. "That's a backdoor." The sheriff raised a brow. "Meaning?" "Meaning someone's still in the system," Darius said. He tapped his tablet. The red light on its edge blinked again. "They're trying to wipe the feed before it locks." Elena, still standing near the aisle, clutched her phone. "Can you stop it?" Darius's fingers moved fast. "Yes, but not from here. I need a stronger uplink." He turned toward the stained glass window, where the sunlight burned through patterns of gold and crimson. "The broadcast antenna on my car, it's still active." The sheriff nodded, instantly catching on. "Go. I'll hold the line." "Go." But the lead agent, the same one who'd drawn his weapon earlier, stepped in front of Darius, blocking the path. "You're not going anywhere. This is still a federal operation." The sheriff's hand went to his holster. "Not anymore." For a heartbeat, no one breathed. The two men locked eyes. Authority versus ego, truth versus pride. Then, without a word, the sheriff drew first. Not his gun, his badge. He ripped it from his chest and dropped it onto the marble floor with a heavy metallic clang. "Until this department clears its name," he said evenly, "I'm just a man doing what's right." The agent's composure cracked. "You can't." "I just did." The sheriff cut him off. The church trembled with tension. The bride reached for Darius's hand, her fingers shaking. "Be careful," she whispered. He smiled faintly, that calm, unnerving smile that always surfaced when everyone else panicked. "I'm always careful." He handed her the device. "If the feed drops below 50%, press this button. It reboots the firewall." She nodded, clinging to the instructions, as if they were vows. Darius started toward the doors, but the agent grabbed his arm. "You're not authorized to." The sheriff moved faster. He caught the agent by the wrist, twisting until the man gasped. "You've done enough damage," he said coldly. "Step aside." Outside, sunlight blazed across the fields. Darius stepped into it, pulling out a sleek black transmitter from his pocket. As soon as it synced with his car's antenna, lines of code cascaded across the tablet's surface like falling water. Inside the church, the guests watched the live feed projected on the wall. Data streams, signal bars, a pulsing lock icon flickering in and out. Elena whispered, "Come on, come on." Then the feed spiked 90%, 94%, 98%, and suddenly static. The screen went black. Inside, the bride's breath caught. "Darius?" No response. The sheriff took a cautious step toward the doorway. "Cole?" A second later, a deafening boom of feedback erupted through the speakers. The lights flickered. Then the screen flared to life again, brighter than before, displaying a single seal. "Federal audit complete. Evidence secured." Applause broke out again, this time louder, raw, unrestrained. The sheriff exhaled in relief. He did it. Then came a voice, faint but clear, through the speaker system. "Darius, transmission locked. They tried to erase it, but I built something they didn't understand." The crowd cheered, but Darius's tone was still sharp, focused. "Every data signature now points to the real source, the same command office that signed my warrant." The sheriff clenched his fists. "It's over for them." "No," Darius replied through the intercom. "It's just beginning." The doors opened again. Darius walked back inside, face streaked with sweat, shirt unbuttoned at the collar. He held the transmitter like a weapon of truth. "They wanted to bury me," he said, voice echoing through the vaulted ceiling. "Instead, they buried their own corruption in the live stream of a wedding." He turned to the stunned agents. "Do you understand what this means? Every protocol you broke today will rewrite how federal warrants are verified. No one raids without confirmation, ever again." The lead agent couldn't meet his eyes. "We were just following orders." Darius stepped closer. "So were they, 100 years ago. That excuse doesn't age well." The sheriff looked around the room at the bride, the crowd, the cameras, and said, "Mr. Cole, what will you do next?" Darius met his gaze. "The only thing they never expect me to do." He smiled, calm and dangerous. "Finish the wedding." The choir, still shaken, began to play again, soft, hesitant notes rising toward the ceiling. Guests sank back into their seats. The bride wiped her tears, laughing through the shock. As Darius took her hands once more, the sheriff stood beside the aisle, hat pressed to his chest. The scene was no longer about chaos or humiliation. It was history reclaiming itself. And above the altar, the final light from the stained glass formed a perfect ring around the couple, an unspoken promise that truth, once seen, can never be unlearned. The choir's melody lingered softly under the vaulted ceiling, fragile like a heartbeat that hadn't decided if it was calm or afraid. Guests were still whispering, trying to process everything that had just unfolded. Darius stood at the altar, his hand never leaving his bride's. The chaos had quieted, but his eyes said it wasn't over. Not yet. The sheriff approached, his boots echoing with authority that now carried weight, not ego. "Mr. Cole," he said in a low voice, "I'll need to take your statement when this ceremony concludes." Darius nodded. "You'll have it, and something else." Quote. He pulled a second device from his pocket, a sleek, matte gray drive. "Everything that happened today, every command executed against me, is copied here, including the chain of authorization. It leads straight to command." The sheriff looked at the drive, then at Darius. "That's a bomb." "Correction," Darius said quietly. "That's evidence." The guests leaned closer, sensing the storm gathering again. The bride squeezed his hand. "You don't have to keep fighting. Not today." Quote. He turned to her, voice gentle. "They made today about power. I'm turning it back to purpose." From the back of the church, Elena stepped forward, phone still recording. "Sir, the network's stabilizing, but there's traffic building, encrypted chatter. Someone's trying to trace your devices." Darius's expression didn't change. "Good. Let them find me." The sheriff frowned. "That's not exactly a survival plan. It's an accountability plan." Darius walked down the aisle, the guests parting instinctively. They hid behind the badge, the bureau, the system. But they've never faced someone who built the system's backbone. Outside, a convoy of black SUVs appeared at the edge of the field. No sirens this time, just silent menace. The sheriff's hand went to his sidearm. "You expecting company?" Darius glanced through the stained glass window. "Command sent them. Damage control." The sheriff muttered a curse under his breath. "You planning to run?" "No," Darius replied. "I'm planning to teach them." He tapped his earpiece. A soft click answered Nia, his head of operations, on the other end. "The feed's up. Apex servers secured. Your orders?" "Open public access," Darius said. A pause. "All of it?" "All of it." Confirmed. Instantly, notifications lit up across phones in the audience, dozens, then hundreds. The Apex live feed had gone public. The whole world was watching now. The sheriff turned to him, eyes wide. "You just made this global." "That's the point," Darius said. "When they hide behind the dark, you turn on every light." From the doorway, the convoy's lead agent entered, a tall man in a black tactical suit, expression unreadable. "Mr. Cole, I'm Agent Turner, Command Liaison. We need to speak privately." Darius didn't move. "You can speak here." Turner's tone sharpened. "This isn't the place." "It's exactly the place," Darius interrupted, voice cutting clean through the air. "You dragged the law into a wedding. Let's finish it in front of witnesses." The agent hesitated. The sheriff folded his arms. "He's right. Speak." Turner exhaled slowly. "The authorization was a miscommunication. A false alert triggered by your own network. Darius's lips curved faintly. So the system hacked itself? No answer. Darius stepped closer. Tell your superiors they've got two choices. Admit the breach and reform the clearance system, or I'll let the world audit it for them. Turner's jaw clenched. You're bluffing. Darius handed him the gray drive. Then prove it. Plug it in. If I'm wrong, it'll clear your name. If I'm right, it'll erase your server in 60 seconds. Turner looked at the sheriff, who said nothing. Just stared. Finally, Turner pocketed the drive. We'll review it. No, Darius said. You'll confess it. Quote. He turned to the gathered crowd, raising his voice so every camera could hear. This isn't about me. It's about what happens when people in power think accountability is optional. The sheriff stepped beside him again, shoulders squared. You're not wrong, he said quietly, but you're also painting a target on your back. Darius's eyes didn't waver. Targets don't scare me. Silence does. The sheriff nodded slowly, the respect between them no longer silent. Then I guess we're both out of a job. Darius looked toward his bride, who smiled through tears. No, he said softly, we're just getting started. Outside, the wind picked up, scattering petals across the floor like confetti for a victory still in motion. And as the live stream numbers climbed past 1 million, the world watched one truth unfold. Justice wasn't quiet anymore, it had found a voice. And it spoke in code. The tension in the chapel had shifted again, no longer chaos, no longer fear, but anticipation. Everyone felt it. The moment before the truth breaks free. The lead agent, Turner, still held the gray drive in his palm. He glanced toward the sheriff, then at Darius, whose calm seemed almost unnatural. You really think the Bureau will confess because of some files? Turner asked, half sneering, half afraid. Darius tilted his head slightly. No, he said, I think the truth will confess itself. Quote. The sheriff took a step forward, voice low and firm. Plug it in, agent. Turner hesitated. Cameras were still rolling. Reporters from local stations were already live streaming from the lawn outside. Whatever happened next would play in real time. He pulled out a portable data terminal, slid the drive in, and tapped the screen. For a moment, nothing. Just silence and the faint hum of electronics. Then, lines of encrypted code began to cascade down the monitor. A pulsing phrase blinked across the display. Clearance logs verified. Source. Command Office. Warrant fabricated. Gasps rippled through the room. The words burned bright enough for every phone camera to capture. Turner's face went pale. This can't be right. Darius stepped closer, his voice barely above a whisper. You called me a criminal in front of my family. In the house of God. You drew guns on me using systems I built to protect people, not humiliate them. Quote. He paused, letting the weight of each word fill the silence. Now, the whole world knows who the real criminals are. The sheriff looked down at the glowing screen, then back up. That's it. It's over. The warrant's fake. The command chain's compromised. Turner reached for his radio. We need to contain this. The sheriff stopped him cold. You'll do nothing. Every second you stall is another lie unraveling on camera. Outside, the crowd of onlookers had grown. Drones hovered above the chapel roof, live feeding the unfolding justice. The image of Darius, tall, steady, immaculate in his white tux, was now streaming on every social platform across the country. Inside, one of the guests, an elderly pastor who had officiated the ceremony, finally spoke. Son, he said softly, you stood in your truth, even when the world pointed guns at you. That's something they can't fabricate. Darius bowed his head slightly. Truth doesn't need to shout, Reverend. It just needs to be seen. Then came the sound, the soft metallic click of handcuffs opening. The sheriff had taken Turner's wrists and was cuffing him instead. By authority of this jurisdiction, Agent Turner, you're under arrest for falsifying a federal warrant and obstruction of justice. The crowd erupted not in chaos, but in vindication. The applause felt like thunder this time, rising from relief and righteous fury. Turner shouted, You don't have the right. The sheriff interrupted, calm but lethal. You stormed a wedding without one. Consider this balance restored. Darius didn't smile. He simply looked at Turner and said, You mistook silence for submission. That was your last mistake. The guests broke into cheers. Cameras flashed. Even the bride, tears shining under the stained glass, whispered, "That's the man I married." The sheriff turned to Darius, his tone softer now. "Mr. Cole, what do you want done with the evidence?" "Send it straight to public archives," Darius said. "Let the people judge for themselves." The sheriff nodded. "Then it's done." As the agents escorted Turner out, the crowd parted again, this time not in fear, but in respect. Darius stood in the center, illuminated by sunlight spilling through the colored glass, haloing him in gold and crimson. He raised his hand toward the guests. "This isn't about me," he said. "It's about what happens when you stop letting power hide behind confusion." Every phone camera caught it. Every live stream carried his voice beyond the walls of that church. And as the sheriff saluted him, quiet and reverent, the internet exploded with a single caption, spreading across millions of screens. "He built the system they tried to use against him, then made it confess." Quote. The music rose again, softer this time, and the world outside the chapel watched not a scandal, but a reckoning. Outside the chapel, the world was already shifting. The crowd had swelled into a sea of phones and flashing cameras. Reporters shouted questions. Drones hovered, and hashtags bearing Darius Cole's name lit up every feed in real time. Inside, the weight of the moment sank in like gravity returning after a storm. The air was thick with adrenaline and disbelief. Darius stood near the altar, motionless for a few seconds, letting the noise fade into a hum. His bride's hand found his again, grounding him in the present. The sheriff removed his hat, eyes scanning the room one last time. "Ladies and gentlemen," he announced, "this church is now an active federal scene. But make no mistake, justice has already been served." Applause broke out again, but it wasn't the wild cheer of chaos anymore. It was quieter, steadier, like respect finding its place. Turner, the lead agent, was escorted toward the exit, face pale and jaw clenched. Cameras caught every frame. The same man who'd burst in with power now walking out in silence, wrists cuffed, head bowed. A woman from the crowd shouted, "He ruined their wedding." The sheriff's reply came firm and clear. "No," he said. "He revealed what justice really looks like." The guests murmured in agreement. One by one, people started clapping, not just for Darius, but for the truth itself. At the front pew, Elena tapped her tablet, watching the Apex feed update in real time. "Sir," she called, "the internal command servers are crashing. Their whole clearance network is shutting down." Darius nodded. "That's the audit doing its job. Every unauthorized signature gets erased and mirrored to oversight." The sheriff gave a low whistle. "You just forced a government reset from your own wedding." Quote. Darius looked up, expression calm, but his eyes glimmered with something deeper, satisfaction mixed with weariness. "No," he said quietly. "I forced accountability. There's a difference." The choir began playing softly again, a low hum of gospel harmony, like the world was exhaling. The bride leaned in close, whispering, "It's over now." Darius turned to her. "For us, yes. For them, it's just beginning." Clout. From the open doors, a distant commotion, sirens, media vans, agents shouting into radios. The sheriff's deputy entered quickly, handing him a phone. "It's the governor," he said. The sheriff raised a brow, then handed the phone to Darius. "It's for you." Darius hesitated, then answered, "Governor Lewis." The voice on the other end carried the tension of political panic wrapped in false courtesy. "Mr. Cole, I want to personally apologize for the incident. I can assure you there will be an immediate review of protocol." Darius's tone stayed level, polite but icy. "Don't review it. Replace it." "Excuse me? You can't fix a system that was built to doubt people who look like me," Darius said. "Start over. Clean chain. Transparent oversight. Or next time, you won't be calling to apologize, you'll be calling to explain." There was silence on the line, then, reluctantly, understood. Darius hung up, handing the phone back to the sheriff. "That's one call down." The sheriff smirked faintly. "You plan to make more?" Darius nodded toward the cameras still rolling. "Already did." Outside, a ripple of cheers surged again as the sheriff stepped beside him. Together, They faced the crowd beyond the doors, one man in a white tux, another in a dark uniform, both framed in light. The sheriff spoke first, his voice carrying over the chaos. For years, we've said the system is broken, but maybe it's not broken, it's blind. Today, it got its sight back. He turned to Darius. You gave it that. Darius met his gaze. I just reminded it to look harder. The sheriff extended his hand. Darius took it. A handshake that felt less like ceremony, more like a treaty. Behind them, Elena raised her voice. Mr. Cole, the live stream just passed 10 million viewers. The crowd outside erupted again. The sound rolled through the open doors like thunder. Darius looked up toward the stained glass ceiling. The light from it painted him in gold and blue, the colors of victory and faith. He turned to his bride. Now, he said softly, let's finish what we started. As they walked back toward the altar, the world outside roared with his name, and amid the noise, one line kept echoing online, captioned under millions of shares. He didn't fight the system. He reprogrammed it. The camera zoomed out on the couple, hand in hand, as the music swelled again, soft, triumphant, unstoppable. Justice had walked in wearing a tuxedo. The organ's final note faded into the air, echoing through the chapel like the last ripple of a storm. The guests were still standing, unsure if the ceremony should continue, but unwilling to leave. Darius and his bride stood beneath the altar, surrounded by the soft glow of stained glass and the weight of a moment that had already rewritten history. The sheriff adjusted his hat, looking at the couple with a kind of reverence. Never thought I'd see justice walk down the aisle, he said quietly. Darius smiled faintly. It didn't walk, he replied. It waited, and today, it stood up. A low murmur swept through the pews, people whispering, some crying, others still filming. This wasn't just a wedding anymore. It was testimony, a vow between love and truth. The officiating pastor stepped forward again, his voice calm, resonant. The vows were interrupted, but not broken. Darius and Elena, do you still wish to continue? The bride looked at Darius through tears and laughter. More than ever, she said. He nodded, taking her hands. The guests quieted, phones lowering as the couple turned toward each other. The pastor raised his hand. Repeat after me. But Darius interrupted softly. If it's all right, I'd like to speak my own. The pastor smiled. By all means. Darius turned fully to his bride, his voice carrying the stillness of the moment. You saw me accused, and you didn't doubt me. You saw them turn their weapons, and you held my hand. I can build systems to protect the world, but you, he paused, emotion breaking through his calm, you protect me. Elena's lips trembled as she answered, then let this be our first promise. No more hiding who we are or what we stand for. The room fell completely silent. Even the cameras seemed to pause. Darius looked out across the crowd, the sheriff, Elena, the guests who had gone from witnesses to believers, and spoke not as a groom, but as a man addressing the world. They tried to turn my wedding into a crime scene, he said, voice steady. But we turned it into evidence that truth still works. They called me a suspect, but all I did was refuse to bow. He looked toward the sheriff. Justice doesn't need noise. It just needs people who won't look away. The sheriff nodded solemnly. Amen to that. The pastor lifted his hand again. By the power vested in me, I now pronounce you husband and wife. Applause erupted, not polite clapping, but a wave of catharsis, relief, redemption. Outside, the church bells rang, echoing through the valley. Drones captured the moment, the couple's first kiss beneath the sunlight, framed by a crowd cheering for love and integrity. Across the internet, millions watched live, and the caption that trended worldwide wasn't about scandal or corruption. It was 4 words. Love wins. Justice follows. As the newlyweds walked down the aisle, confetti rained down, real this time, not chaos disguised as order. Elena wiped her eyes. The sheriff saluted. And in a final voiceover, Darius's words lingered, strong and timeless. They thought the story was about power, but it was always about principle. I didn't raise my voice. I raised the standard. Fade out. The screen dimmed to black, and for one quiet second, the world simply breathed again, reminded that even in the face of prejudice and power, dignity never needed permission to exist.